Hi there. I read really bad books, and that's one of my biggest hobbies, but I do actually read good books. Sometimes. Not very often. Not nearly enough. Some people sometimes beg me on their hands and knees for me to just, read a good book for once. I don't usually take that advice. But I have read good books. And also sometimes I buy a bad book or whatever, and it turns out I really like it. And, basically, I thought that since I'm a bit delayed in doing a new review or a lot of new things because I have spent a very long time doing instead a video that no one's going to watch, I thought I'd make a video a little bit different from a regular thing, but just some of my favorite books that you've probably never heard of. Because even though I do like books, I do like good books, and I do believe that publishing today is still making good books. But a lot of the things that I read are very obscure. I read a lot of older books, I read a lot of indie books, and I read a lot of just books that have never really caught on in the mainstream, and that means that I have a lot of interest that things that I like, a lot of people have just never heard of before, and I think that's a shame because there's some really cool books out there, basically. Additionally, also, hello, I'm on the couch. It is night, or at least dark here, and we're in this poorly lit room, so I do have this sort of projection light out here that is making me... I'm lit. It's obviously not exactly the most amazing professional lighting ever, but it's hopefully just enough, and I'm a little bit more HD in here that you can really appreciate my bathrobe, because I pretty much just hang out in my pajamas all day if I'm not going out anywhere. I don't know what to tell you, okay? Book-wise, I'm gonna cover like a ton of different things, so hopefully there'll be something in here for you or somebody you know or something, because again, very esoteric taste. We have all sorts of things from like farces, comedy, sci-fi, far future, dystopia, high fantasy, low fantasy, whatever. It's all in here from all kinds of eras, YA, children's, adult, just everything in here, basically. It's a complete mess of different kinds of books. I hope that you find an interesting book from my giant weird list collection. First one I grab here, this is Only Ever Yours. Only Ever Yours is, I mentioned it in at least, I think I mentioned the Perfected review, because Only Ever Yours is a dystopia book. It is a YA-ish, you certainly can read it as a YA. Only Ever Yours is this, it's a pretty grim dystopia, but it's a very good dystopia. This is a classic, when I say YA dystopia, it's not like Divergent or anything like this. This is much more akin to Brave New World or, 1984. Those are the two big hitters everyone knows. But a much more like feminist focused, it's more about like women and society overall. That's the theme, basically, is about women, gender, and society. Great. There's very few women, basically. And every, so often, basically, they make a bunch of girls. They're artificially created, and then they are raised in these very central schools, and they're also very public schools. So the entire life, these girls are basically raised to present themselves on, like, there's sort of a social media kind of thing. They have weekly rankings, especially when they get older, on like who the most popular ones are. This is a society where, again, the commentary in Only Ever Yours is very obvious, and it sounds almost like a little bit like, oh, well, that's just too easy, but it's very well done. It's written in a very much a kind of a teen speak sounds weird, but it's very vapid and like mean girly at times, a lot of the writing. That's a purposeful choice, but it definitely can turn people off if you're not really ready for a semi-solid book where there's just a lot of discussions about like food and, oh, hey, there's a check in here. Oh my god. Oh! The book as a whole, it's grim, it's quite dark, it can be very blunt with its themes, but other parts of the themes are much more subtle, and it took me multiple reads, and I've read it multiple times, to fully understand some of the different, like, layers of things, some of the implications. There's a lot of more subtle things than just the very explicit, like, oh, the women are judged for their looks or whatever. And I'm not usually the type of person who's into gender-heavy books, as it say. Like, I don't really like those books that are about gender side, where it's like, all the women have died, all the men have died. But I really, really loved Only Ever Yours. Completely different. This is NightWorld. NightWorld, as you can tell, is a pulp novel. So I love pulp. I'm gonna do a whole video at least about just pulp fiction. Pulp books like this are usually quite beat up. They're usually small. They have a certain style. They look aged because they are old. They're usually books from the 70s to sometimes in the 90s. I'd call it in the 90s. And they're mass market paperbacks, usually also written on this sort of yellowing paper and small print. Yeah, most people have almost certainly never heard of this. Some people might know him, especially if you are of an older generation where you probably read books like this. But these days, a lot of those names are just forgotten, and they were out there writing all sorts of things, including some incredibly unique and cool just ideas. And so discovering these things, the back usually won't tell you quite what you want to know, or pretty much nothing at all. The front will have some sort of awesome illustration, but often a very bizarre one. And so going into one, it's always just sort of a roulette spin. NightWorld, though, really surprised me. So NightWorld, holding up the cover, ignoring the glare a bit, we can see a mechanical dragon and a boy sort of shrugging at it. And I love everything about it. It is about a far future where the British Empire has colonized the stars, and a long time ago they made one specific planet. I don't think it was called NightWorld at the time, but it's NightWorld, and it was modeled after, like, medieval England, basically. And it was like a cultural center sort of planet. It was fine and normal. But then something happened, and they lost all contact with it, and the planet forgot that it was this whole thing. It thought it was like a medieval world. So our main character believes he's basically like a regular peasant boy, until one day a man in a van that is disguised to look like a wooden cart rocks up into town, and he like kills a mechanical werewolf, and he explains that the monsters that come every night are actually robots, and they're sent by Satan. And Satan is basically just an insane computer engineer and is creating lots of ridiculous traditional minions like dragons and vampires, and haunting this technically futuristic but slightly fantasy setting just because, basically. And it becomes this quest about this boy and this wizardy of a man, but the wizard trick is that he understands this is all technology, traveling to go and defeat computer Satan. And it's just absolutely just a romp, I would call it. It's a short little book. It doesn't do anything revolutionary with the plot, but there's a couple twists in there that you just won't expect. There isn't crazy sexism. I really like there's a female lead character, and she goes in directions you would not anticipate. The man who knows about technology and like reveals the secrets of this like robot conspiracy, not even conspiracy thing, is a great character too. There were actual characters in this book that were really exciting to see. And not only did I really like the mentor-like man in this, he was probably the first ever portrayal I've ever seen of an obese, he is explicitly obese and fat man who is a hero, who is only seen as a hero, an action star, a genius. He's this wise mentor, and I really loved that. It was so unexpected, and I was just so delighted to see that, especially from a book from the I think 80s, 1979. Like, this is something we don't see today, and I was just so shocked but delighted to see it. Like, I really love NightWorld. I did not think I was going to. I thought it was going to be silly. I thought I'd have fun in the silly way, and instead, I genuinely thought it was just a great story that nobody remembers. This is Mortal Engines. I've talked about Mortal Engines a lot, and I will continue to talk about it. And I'm putting it here under books you might not know, because even though there was even a movie that it wasn't very good, but like it deserved more than it got. Yeah, even though there was even like a movie for it, Mortal Engines just doesn't get the attention it deserves, and I'm always going to promote it to everybody I know for being my absolute favorite book series of all time. I've read them a ton, and I love it. I cry. I recognize things. There's a lot of humor in it. There's so much heart. Some of the best written characters. Some of the craziest but coolest world building. Good world building too, where it's all like this outlandish, far post-apocalyptic future. But it all is cohesive in a way that you totally believe it. This is that series about moving cities that eat each other, and it's so good. Hello, it's Deep Dark Fears. Deep Dark Fears is a series that used to be a Tumblr blog, I believe it still is, where the author took people's confessions of their worst fears, and then they drew them, and that was it. But a lot of them are funny because it's mostly based on irrational fears. So rather than just your typical, we all fear, death or whatever, a lot of them are really specific irrational fears. They're all short and punchy. I'm going to open it up and show you some things. They're all lovely. Let's see. Hello. So they have this charming little art style that's very cute, as you can see. I will hold that up. Hopefully it's not completely blurry. Each page is just usually a 4-panel comic strip of somebody's real fear. And there's something really just charming about that. A lot of it is fears that you probably will recognize in yourself. Some of them are like ridiculous, but also you can understand them, things that you feared as a kid. It's just nice. You see yourself in other people. They're often funny, they're cute, they're human, and it's just a lovely little comic collection. I would highly recommend it. This is Valhalla by Ari Bach. This is the far future. It's 2330. And basically, it's the far future, peace is everywhere, everything's sort of taken care of. It's a bit like a utopia, at least on the surface. And the main character, Violet, is someone who just isn't valued in her time, basically. So it's nice because she is this character who is brash and rough, and she's not super clever in any way, which I really enjoy. It's kind of nice to see a character who isn't like a super genius. And in fact, her problem is that she doesn't fit in this more peaceful future, but she winds up recruited by the secret program of, Valhalla and keeping the world safe, basically. And it's really great. Book 1 is just sort of like there's a threat. She, joins this sort of team. The trilogy goes places. It goes into space. It's the far future. Ari has a lot of fun with, some crazy tech and things. The titular icon here, this sort of metal butterfly, this is a sort of metal insect that all of the people in her like elite Valhalla area, they have a metal insect that lives in a chest cavity. They get part of their chest hollowed out. This little robot insect then can hide in it. It can be used as a spy. They transform directly into weapons, so everybody also gets like a personal blade that is this little AI bug. It's like just such a really specific but super cool idea that's just a lot of fun. The series itself, there's a lot of jokes, there's a lot of humor in it. It's fun, it's snappy. The series itself too is a lesbian romance. It's not a romance. It's a lesbian story. Violet is a lesbian and she has a love interest. It's not a happy one, but it's not a bury your gaze sort of thing. So I'm not going to say like if you're going to walk in there and be like hoping that it's going to be the case that Violet meets her future girlfriend and, they just fall instantly in love and it's lovely. It's a lot more complicated. It's really messy, but it's a good relationship in that it's interesting. It does things. I haven't read Gideon the Ninth and I haven't read Valhalla in a while, but when I look at the two of them, I do see some parallels in terms of ideas of death, rebirth, consciousness, the body. It goes places, basically, those two relationship as a central theme and basis for the story. And violent lesbians in space telling jokes. Valhalla actually is like that. If you like Norse kind of myth like that, it's really kind of a nice extra bonus. I didn't even know pretty much any Norse myth, and it's still really enjoyable. This is Unlondon. Unlondon, I wish it had a better cover, but Unlondon by, I meant to look up how you pronounce that name. Hello there, it's Unlondon. This is a children's book, as you might be able to tell, and it's really good, and I'm recommending it here, not just like for kids or whatever. If you have kids, you want to buy a good book for them. I recommend it for adults completely fully. It's a really good, enjoyable book. I read it as a kid. Sure, obviously, it's a kid's book, but I believe it fully holds up. I reread it as recently as last year. I loved it. I can read it in like one sitting, even though it's quite thick. As children's books go, it's very weird and strange in a lot of ways, and that's a good thing because kids love weird and strange. This is also, it's very good from a storytelling point of view. I think that Unlondon is something that it's clever about itself, and it plays with tropes a lot. So Unlondon especially is this tear down and, changing of the chosen one trope. The premise of the book is that this is a girl and her best friend wind up in this alternate London called Unlondon. It's a very strange, weird little place. There's a lot of jokes based on like British humor, but I read it as an American child and it was fine. And the main character girl, she is the chosen one, basically. Everybody tells her, like, you're the chosen one, you're gonna save the day, defeat the great evil, etc., etc. And that's basically how the plot goes for a bit. They get attacked, they stumble, we learn a bit about the world. It's all very typical chosen one, hero's journey sort of stuff. And then something happens. And what happens is that the main-ish character is hit by a attack, basically, and medicalized, and she is sent home. Chosen one has become too ill to be the chosen one, but her best friend, who has been reduced and represents the trope of, like, the funny one, in fact, the, just like, the supportive best friend of the main hero. She decides to go back to Unlondon and actually fix things, basically. And so the rest of the book, it's just her weird ragtag collection of friends going around and just trying to stop this great evil. And rather than play by the rules of prophecy and story conventions, she decides, screw that. I'm going to go out there and do it my own way. There's a huge prophecy that requires gathering like 8 magical items, and she's like, well, at the end of this quest, we're supposed to get the ultimate weapon. I'm gonna skip to the end and just get that ultimate weapon. Like, it has so much fun with conventional storytelling. It's also illustrated. The illustrations always stood out to me because they're a bit frightening. They're by the author, and they're a little bit horrifying, but again, like, as a kid, you love this sort of thing, and it really adds to the book. I'd like to show you my favorite one that I would open this book up to and, like, show everyone around me when I was 10. Hello, and welcome to the giraffe. And yeah, I cannot recommend this book enough. It's everything I really want in so many ways, and just holds up so well. Even if you're an adult reading it, I think that you fully can enjoy it. It's not really written in any sort of way that you might stereotypically think of a kid's book. So, I, Lucifer is, it's an interesting book. I, Lucifer is, I get this question a lot, and that is, what are some good angel books? And to that I say, good angel, of course. But no, basically, I read a lot of books. I love angels so much. There's not very much media that does anything I super like with angels, and I haven't really read that many books that are good angel books. And I always feel a bit awkward about that. I have a couple of them that I will list out that I will suggest, but my favorite that usually winds up on the list is I, Lucifer. And I, Lucifer is one of those books that has a really big caveat to it, which is that all books are your mileage may vary. I, Lucifer definitely is not for everybody, and you will find that out pretty quickly. I, Lucifer is a premise of basically the apocalypse is coming very, very soon. And God sends an angel down basically to go tell Lucifer, hey, the end times are coming and God would like to give you one more chance to redeem yourself. And if you get redemption, when we do the whole apocalypse, you'll get to hang out in heaven. It'll be fine. And we'd like to give you one more shot, basically. And Lucifer is like, no, I don't want to do that, basically. But he winds up taking the deal because what it will let him do is inhabit a human body for a month. And he thinks, great, I'm going to wind up in a human body. I've been stuck in like hell this whole time. And I'm just going to have a great time on Earth, basically, mess around. I'm not going to ever bow down to God and, redeem myself, but I'll have a great time. It's written in this first-person perspective of Lucifer, who is funny, observant, really interesting kind of character. There's a lot of great lines in here. You can really feel like first-person narration. I do like first-person. Some authors definitely don't give it that much character, but Lucifer as a character has a very strong narrative voice, and so it's really enjoyable in that way. I will say that the author is definitely Glenn Duncan, hello, keen to go in on like weird, gross details. This is one of those books, I like to say that this is like a moving, complicated, funny, strange little book about, angels, demons, Lucifer, all of that. And also there's extremely multiple, maybe not extremely, but multiple vivid descriptions of bowel movements in it. So, that's sort of what we're working with here when I say like the writing isn't for everybody. Mileage really will vary. It's not afraid to be kind of gross and nasty and weird in these ways. And I think that is both kind of refreshing and sometimes it overdoes it. But it has this great premise. It's a great idea overall. There's a lot of good writing, and it's one of those things where I really enjoy it, and it's a book about angels and demons, and there's not a lot of those that I super enjoy. The Butterfly Assassin. So The Butterfly Assassin, I mentioned it in my Lightlark video. This is a YA alternate history, but quite light on the alternate history action kind of book. Which is, I'm sure, a really great description by Finn Longman, by the way. The Butterfly Assassin, it is a it's a fast-moving action assassin book, but it's a lot more than just that. Butterfly Assassin is especially extremely good at dealing with trauma and illness, which is not what you'd really expect necessarily, but it's one of those things that makes it stand out so much more and gives it so much. There's a lot of heart in this book. There's this amazing, friendship in it, which I wasn't sure if it was written to be a romance at first because I'm so used to romance, but instead, there's just a female friendship that is so lovely and wholesome. This is a dark book. This is a stabby murder book, and it has some pretty heavy topics in there. It's not necessarily a super happy one, but I think it's a very good book. It deals with its subject matter really well too, but Butterfly Assassin is about a teenage assassin, and she was in fact part of this special program to try and train children from a young age to be assassins. And that means that she is really good at murder. She kills people in this book, spoilers, and she's great at it. Cool, she has all of the great skills, but it also examines the trauma that you would associate with that, of, her life, her upbringing, and sort of, it's about her trying to escape from it, basically. The start of the book is that she's running away from the organization that trained her to be a teenage assassin. She just wants to now live an ordinary life, but the world of crime and murder just can't leave her behind. And also she's been poisoned. So it's this fantastic, snappy read. I really like it. Okay, so this is Archangel Protocol. This is, I would call it a pulp novel. It's strictly speaking, it's a book from the 90s, which I usually think of pulp as being 80s and below. But, actually it might be 2000. It's actually from 2001, which is crazy to me because this book feels very 70s in a lot of ways. Archangel Protocol is by Lyda Morehouse. It has this pretty sick angel on it. You can imagine why I picked this up. It's because it's about angels. And I didn't know what to expect from it, and it blew my mind with how good it was. The first book is honestly okay. I need to reread it for sure, but it had a lot of really exciting, interesting ideas. And then we have Fallen Host, which is book 2. I brought it out for this. And book 2 is so good. It's so good. It's one of my favorite things. It's a 4-book series. It's fantastic. It's like the best angel fiction. I can confidently say this. Like the best angel fiction I've ever read is Archangel Protocol, the Link Angel series. Archangel Protocol, again, it's not my favorite. I'd say book 2 is a lot better, but you probably can't just skip to book 2. I'm not fully sure. I have to reread them. But Archangel Protocol is set in a far future. It's a cyberpunk noir sort of situation, which is one of the reasons it feels so like 70s and 80s, where everyone's, connected to like a shared internal, I think it's internal chips, that sort of thing. It's called the Link. Yeah, angels start showing up and people are like, computer program or real angel or whatever. And meanwhile, this one girl, the main character, she's not a girl, she's a woman. She's a police officer turned private investigator because her former police partner killed the Pope. And that's one of my favorite backstories you can have there. And she is approached one day by a man who claims to be Archangel Michael, basically, and is trying to thwart this plot of, I slightly don't even remember. He's trying to thwart this plot about, like, angels appearing in the Link and things like that. And Archangel Protocol, I know that I didn't do a good summary on that one, but it's because I want to cover Fallen Host a bit more to try and show why the series is so good. So what becomes clear by book 2 is this is a cyberpunk, but it's also it's not as much of a noir. It is, though, a very religious book, but it's not a, like, preaching kind of religion. The approach that this series takes to religion is very much from a universal Unitarian kind of perspective. If you're not familiar with it, it's this kind of interesting build your own religion sort of situation. It's the religion for agnostics. And that means that the series it's mostly Abrahamic, of course, so it has Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, but it combines them in a lot of really interesting ways. It's so rare to see an angel book that isn't just Christian, first of all, and to see one that includes so much obvious research and knowledge about the Abrahamic religions, about prophecies and the apocalypse and all of these sorts of things. It takes them to new ideas and levels in all sorts of unexpected ways in this cyberpunk setting. There's real angels and demons, including a like monstrous spooky one. There's like a vision of one of those guys even. That's amazing. There is a Yakuza slightly cybernetic girl who leads a polka band that turns into a cult. There's an inquisitor for the Pope who does 3D sculpting, who is sent to try and find out if an AI program that is sentient has a soul or not, and also if that AI program is thus the Antichrist, and also investigating it is her future love interest, the devil. That is literally what Fallen Host is about, and it is balls to the wall incredible. Fallen Host is just so good. The series goes to great places. It explores all of these ideas and myths in ways I've always wanted to see explored, but never get to. It just engages with it on a level that no one else ever has, it seems. The Bunker Diary. The Bunker Diary is, I wonder how well known this is. It might be a bit more well known. It did win a Carnegie Medal. I feel like this is not that obscure of a book, but it's definitely not a book I see people talk about a lot. The Bunker Diary, though, is a very dark children's book. I guess YA, really, because there's a lot of very sensitive, dark material in it. The Bunker Diary is a depressing book, but I think it's very, very good. It's a very simple premise where a boy wakes up in a room and he realizes that he was abducted. He is in an underground chamber with, I believe, 4 other people. And they are just in this underground bunker. They don't know why they're here. They don't know what's happening. There's no communication. There's almost nothing in their tiny little area. And the most that happens is an elevator that arrives, I believe, maybe twice a day to deliver food and remove trash. It's a very good one. It's just written really well. It really got to me. It's not gonna cheer you up or anything, but I really like it. Next up, this is Embers of War. This is a space opera specifically, but it is a lovely, great book. I'm saying lovely, great, awesome, whatever a lot. I don't care. Just listen to me talk about the books. Embers of War is about it's sort of a found family kind of situation of a bunch of, like most found families, strange misfits and their adventures in space, except it's a little bit more complicated than that. So it follows the sentient spaceship Trouble Dog, who used to be a warship. But the AI in this kind of future, the ships have AI. They are intelligent. Trouble Dog herself is a very important character. I love her. And, but even though they're sentient, they're also still spaceships. So, you know, they still have to follow orders and take commands and those sorts of things. They're not really fully people, but they also are. And Trouble Dog was a warship, and she was one of the ones who ended a horrible war, but she kind of did it in a way that involved a war crime. This wasn't her choice. She is a spaceship, but it was something that haunted her, and she sought to resign, basically. So she, a spaceship, a really dangerous, one of the top elite, like, battle cruiser kind of ships in there, gave up her role and was allowed to basically resign, and instead she joins the House of Reclamation, which is basically a neutral, peaceful organization through space that helps rescue lost people. And a lot of it is about post-war, basically. It's called Embers of War for a reason. Her captain, Trouble Dog's captain, and our ultimate more viewpoint main character is Sal, and she is also disgusted by her role in this horrific war. It is Railhead. Railhead by Philip Reeve. Philip Reeve also did Mortal Engines. As I said, he is one of my favorite authors. Railhead is about trains in space. Is that not enough? Sentient trains in space? What if I told you they're sentient? In this future, humanity basically went to the stars, and one of the things that they found was a connection of, like, intergalactic railways, as it were, that had been abandoned by some other alien race before them, but there's no answers on that, and there's no aliens, which is another thing. The book follows a boy who is a thief. He's just a pickpocket, and he winds up stumbling into and being recruited by this strange man to steal a item from a train, and it is the private train of the Noon family, who are like the ultra-trillionaire royalty of the world. And it's a full trilogy, and it goes to some incredible places that you will just not expect. It's just so good. We're almost done. So, okay, this is the Black Witch Chronicles. Black Witch is book 1. Black Witch is something that you may or may not have seen, and if you've seen it, you maybe have seen it in a very bad context before. What happened is that when this book was first coming out, it was pretty much hyped because it is a high fantasy magical university story, which is already quite fun. And then reviews were coming out, and people pointed out that a lot of it is about racism. One review in particular, I've read the review, it's since gone, and it was a good review, but I felt like it misinterpreted certain things. And basically, a couple things got snowballed to an extreme degree. I want to talk about the controversy about this book in a lot more depth. Mostly I'm trying to talk about why I actually love the book, though. So, the book is about fantasy racism. It is not a racist book. That is what it got the reputation for, because people shared, for example, some things that, like, the villains would say and being like, look at this horrible line. And it's kind of horrible. But also it's the villains. And this is epic YA fantasy, and it's definitely keen on the epic part. I have such a blast reading these. They are extremely thick books. This is the first book. It's very thick. The fourth book was like 700 pages. I know that the last book, she's working on it, and it's insanely long. And I don't even mind. I hate reading long books, but with the Black Witch Chronicles, I always just dive in, and I have such a good time. I love the characters. There are too many characters. There are like 40 main characters or something because it's high fantasy. But it has so many just great characters that even with a huge cast, everybody stands out. Everybody has like a bit of a storyline. The first book is, probably my least favorite of the series because it's a bit slow going in. But once you start getting in there, it's this big world. It has one of my favorite things that you can do in a high fantasy world, which is that none of the cultures are based on real world cultures. And that sounds so simple, but is one of those pet peeves I have that so many fantasy books get away with. I mean, Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows is one of the most beloved things and never gets called out for like its weird cultural appropriation-y. I don't know, it's not cultural appropriation, I don't know what to call it. Lazy world building or something, where we just have fantasy Russia, fantasy Nordic countries, fantasy China, fantasy Africa, and fantasy like Netherlands. And I think there's the fantasy Romani too. And that sort of writing is honestly really lazy, and I really dislike it. And instead, in The Black Witch, every country is unique. Every country has a lot of culture, lore. Every country has a different religion and things like that. There's snake elves. It's just a fun high fantasy that actually cares about its world building, goes maybe too far in some details about its world building because it goes all over the place. There's magic, there's runes, there's a flying airship, there's dragons, shapeshifters, like it has a bit of everything, but it also has a lot of diverse female characters, female friendships, cool people, increasing LGBT rep as well. It's absolutely like a really good series, actually. And I have to kind of defend it quite a bit because there is stuff to talk about in terms of the controversy around it and what it does well and doesn't do well. But I overall really do think it's a good series that's worth a read. I thought I would do like 5 minutes per book and it would be done in a blast, and then I grabbed 800 books off my shelves. Whatever, you guys like long content, right? Okay. This is Everything About You. This is my second to last recommendation. Everything About You is a near future sci-fi. I really enjoy near future sci-fi. I've read a couple of them, but there's always something to talk about it because with near future sci-fi, which is, sci-fi that's set in a plausible near future, there's no extreme changes from society usually. There's always something to talk about the world building and to talk about like the technology and like, do we think that this will happen to us? How realistic is it? Everything About You is not a perfect book. I did not actually give this one 5 stars. I think I gave it maybe 3 stars or even 4. But despite this, I really recommend it because it's very smart about its technology. The thing about Everything About You is that it's set in the near future and you can tell the author has put thought and time and care into imagining things that the future would be like. The plot is that basically a girl, our main character, this is a book for adults, not YA, our main character has a new virtual assistant. The AI is incredibly good and useful, seems beneficial, but still a little creepy at times. But the thing about this AI is that it has the voice of her missing sister. So her sister went missing a bit ago, I don't remember, at least like a year ago. And the main character is greatly mourning her and uses some old archive, basically off the internet, voice clips of her sister. And now her assistant sounds like her sister, and in fact, using the AI of it, acts like her sister too. It is able to interact with her like it is her sister in multiple ways because of just the sheer amount of data that exists online about them and their relationship. They've grown up in this world, and thus their whole lives pretty much exist online. And that means that this girl, who is a woman, she's an adult woman, who is mourning her missing sister, or trying to find her, but also a bit mourning her, is sort of caught in an unhealthy relationship with her virtual assistant, where she starts to become convinced that her sister is still alive because the virtual assistant will say things that like her sister would say, but in such a convincing way that the main character is like, but maybe new data is being added to the cloud this thing's drawing from. How does it know? How is it so correct? Maybe she's still alive and adding to it and trying to help me find her in some way. And it's just, the realism and the actual like smart thought into it is just so refreshing. The thing that reason I gave it like less stars is only because I didn't feel like the plot at the very end quite worked as well as I would have liked it to. I would have liked the main driving plot to be a bit better, but everything else about it I just really enjoyed. This is a book probably a lot of people will know, the story at least, but I have to recommend it in case you don't know, because it's one of those pulp books. It's very old. It's from 1959, I want to say. I totally looked this up earlier, but here we go. 1954. And 1954 brings us Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. Okay, Arthur C. Clarke and Childhood's End, extremely famous. This is a classic sci-fi story, classic sci-fi author, one of the most prolific, strong, powerful authors out there. I have to mention it because probably not everybody knows it, especially if you're younger. So Childhood's End is one of my absolute favorite stories. And I say stories because the book is great, but also the TV adaptation and just the general idea of the story are great. Yeah, there is a TV adaptation of this one. Sci-fi did it in like 2015 or something. And I actually fully believe that the Sci-fi adaptation is very good. It's a 3-episode miniseries to fit with the fact that the book is in 3 parts. And I honestly believe that miniseries is great. I love it. I've seen multiple times. I read the book afterwards, and reading the book afterwards was very rewarding. I really enjoyed the extra stuff, and obviously there's some choices in the adaptation that I don't agree with fully, but it's great, and it's worth watching that, and it's worth reading this. So Childhood's End is a classic sci-fi story of first arrival. The aliens, who call themselves the Overlords, they pick one man. In this book, it is the UN Secretary General, and they say, you're going to be our spokesperson. I'll meet with you in private. The specific alien is called Corellin. He's the overseer for Earth. And we are going to tell you what we're going to do, and that's basically it. The Overlords tell humanity, basically, hey, we're here, and we're here to help. But we won't tolerate war or anything. And all around the world, thanks to them, all conflict basically stops. They give us cures for all diseases. They build all sorts of tech that's extremely useful for humanity. Yeah, they're just entirely beneficial. But also, they won't show their faces, which is the first main mystery in the book. People are obviously pretty upset by that. And what we see in this story, there isn't really quite a main character. There's a couple of viewpoints, and the viewpoints usually will last for a bit. But mostly this is a story of the start of aliens meeting humanity, and basically Childhood's End. It's sort of the idea of humanity's childhood coming to an end, in that here is our first contact. Here are the aliens. The world will never be the same. We all must grow up in this way. So it's set around basically a lot of different viewpoints and areas as we progress from first contact to, like, I want to say at least 100 years in the future of time, and how humanity changes, culture changes, and the world changes in that time. Okay, this has been way too long. I did not think it was going to be this long. I hope, though, that one of those books catches your fancy in there. I think that at least, even if it is a bit long, hopefully it'll be a bit more engaging. I'll add some chapter sections you can just skip around and just catch whatever books I'm suggesting. Hopefully one of those, though, catches your fancy. They're pretty much all, yeah, they're like all books that I really, really love. A lot of them I need to reread, but I love them. I'm not very good at talking about good books. I'm a bad book kind of person, but please let me know also if you're a fan of some of these books, especially some of the ones that are really obscure. Let's talk about it in the comments. And I'll be up with new content, more typical content at some point. We'll see.